This video is on calculating interest. There's two types of interest that we're going to look at: simple interest and compounded interest. Simple interest is an easier way to calculate interest. It will usually give you an estimate of what your interest is going to be. It is not compounded, it is just a percentage of the amount of money that you have deposited or that you owe, depending on which it is. Compound interest means after a certain period, and the problem would tell you what the period is, they add the interest on. And they continue to do that every period. Now, the period could be anywhere from daily interest to monthly interest. Quarterly interest would be every 3 months, 4 times a year. Or annual interest, which would just be compounded every year. So that's what we're going to look at. There are two different formulas. The formula for simple interest, you're actually finding the interest, and the interest equals the principal times rate times time. The principal is the original amount of money that you, in this case, we're going to talk about depositing. The rate is usually an annual rate, which means it's how much interest they charge a year. If it's not annual, it will state that it's a monthly interest rate or something like that, but usually an interest rate is given as an annual rate. And the T is time. Now, the time has to agree with the rate. So if it's an annual rate, the time has to be in years. And sometimes a problem will tell you how many months you had it in there. You had the money in the account for 18 months. To change months to years, you multiply, and remembering what we did in our previous unit, you'd have to put months on the bottom and years on the top. So however many months they give you, you're actually going to end up dividing it by 12, because the 12 would go on the bottom, and that would tell you the number of years that you had the money in the account. Okay, compound interest, the formula actually is different from simple interest. The simple interest tells you how much interest you've accumulated. The compound interest tells you how much you have in the account, the amount of money in the account. And that is the principal times 1 plus R is still the interest rate divided by N. And N is the number of interest periods in 1 year. So if it's quarterly, that would be 4 interest periods. Monthly would be 12. If it's annually, there's only 1 year in a year, so it would be 1. And then that is raised to the power of n times t. Now again, the N is the number of interest periods in a year, and T is the number of years. So those are going to both be yearly. We do have to still make sure that our interest rate and our T are the same. And usually that means if T is given in anything other than years, you need to change it to years first. Okay, now the difficulty here is my board is only so big. So I am going to just erase what's underneath here. And I'm going to read the problems. I'm not actually going to write it all out. That would take up the whole board. Okay, so the first problem, we're going to look at simple interest. And we are told that we want to find the amount of interest earned if you deposit $3,000. So you've got $3,000 that you deposit in an account that has 8% interest for 18 months. Okay. I'm afraid that might not show up real well, so I'm going to change color here. The amount of interest is the principal, which is $3,000, times the interest rate. We learned when we studied percent that you can't use it with a percent sign on it, so you have to change it to a decimal. That would be 0.08. And 18 months, if you divide it by 12, you get 1.5, or it's a year and a half. And that's all you need to do to calculate that. If you put that in your calculator, you will come up with $360. Interest on your $3,000 if you leave it in the account for a year and a half. Now, if you want to know how much money you have, the amount of money that you now have in the bank is what you started with, the $3,000, plus the $360, which is $3,360, is what you would currently have in the account. Okay. The next problem I want to look at is compound interest.